Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. All right. Hey, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm excited to have Paul Klein joining us. Paul, welcome.
Hello, Michael. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this discussion. I know we just talked recently when I was on your podcast, so it's great to role reversal. And yeah, today I'm really looking forward to this conversation because you've worked with some very well-known brands: Target, Slack, UC Berkeley, Cracker Barrel, Holiday Inn, KFC, Taco Bell, Yum Brands, JCPenney, Sherwin-Williams, others, right? Like it's well-known brands. But you started off in construction and building code enforcement, then decided to go out on your own and really kind of establish a couple of different companies focusing on the Accessibility Compliance and America Disabilities Act. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Absolutely. Yeah, we had a background in construction, inspection with local and private companies for 18 years. And then I left about 10 years ago in the heat of the recession in 2009. Never was to be a W-2 employee ever again, and been consulting ever since with many of those brands you've mentioned and many others.
Right. And for everyone outside of the US, W-2 employee just means it's kind of like you're a full-time employee. You get your W-2 end of the year, right? Shows how much you made and all that kind of stuff. So you went from being an employee in an organization to launching your own consulting business.
Correct.
And the companies like Target and Slack and Taco Bell, were these clients of the Accessibility Compliance Consulting and Software company that you have?
Yeah. Mainly the software company we just started 3 years ago. So when I transferred from my organization and being a professional, mid-manager into my own consulting business, I honed in on I know you talk about this, Michael, about being hyper niched, super niched. And it was solving a specific problem in the marketplace for a specific need. In that particular case, it was for anyone or any facilities, whether they're Fortune 500 companies or mom and pop shops in Main Street. It was related to the Americans with Disabilities Act. I started out just with mom and pop shops locally, just started small and organically. And then over time, I invoked what I call the 3 pillars of revenue. And eventually, through my training courses and networking, got my first Fortune 500 client. It just branched from there over the last 10 years. But it didn't take long to break into that because I was so hyper niched or focused down to a specific area. As you know, when you solve that problem, that specific problem people need, they'll find you.
Yeah.
That's certainly the case.
There's a lot of good lessons in there. I love how you were saying, it didn't take long. And I was just thinking, you just mentioned 10 years before you said that. And it's like the saying that a lot of people say, overnight success, 10 years in the making, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's dig more into, because I really want people to understand your area of expertise. What exactly is your consulting company about? What services and products are you providing in relation to accessibility compliance and the software that you've also developed for that?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, I have 3 companies. So my personal brand and podcasting, which we can talk about, is separate. But my company that I've had for the last 10 years is directly related to the Americans with Disabilities or ADA compliance. And that is, in America, all facilities have to be made to comply for persons with disabilities. As you know, there's a certain percentage of the population that have inherent disabilities, as well as vets and other population, and having them inclusive and included in society and being able to be able to go out their business and have the freedom, just like we do as able-bodied people, is very important, and which is why the U.S. adopted this law back in the early 90s. And so for a lot of the businesses and a lot of these big corporations, it's a complex law. It's enforced through lawsuits and litigation as opposed to an authority or like an inspector or something. It's all self-regulated. So they need consultants and they need experts to come in and say, hey, how do we make our facilities compliant? And then you have to mix in all the state regulations. Every state has their own separate set of regulations. So it's a complex niche, but it's related to architecture, construction, engineering.
And so are you getting involved then before a building is actually built, or are you brought in once it's already in place and then you go to work?
Both. A lot of the larger companies that you mentioned, what we would do is they have 3,000 sites nationwide. And what a lot of those brands do is they'll freshen up their brand with a facade and image update every 5 to 7 years. And so what we would do is go in and do what we call a pre-inspection, and we would capture all the issues and so forth. And then they can take that report and then incorporate it into their design and their construction phase. And then we would come back and do it. We call it post-inspection. So it's kind of property audit or a inspection type report.
Got it. Okay. And then you mentioned that for you, you started kind of very organically, very focused, got some, I think you call them mom and pop shops, right? The smaller kind of businesses, which then down the road led to the much larger kind of global brands that you've worked with. But take us back to actually how you went about getting your first client. Like, were you knocking on doors? Did you leverage some relationships and referrals? How did you go about getting that first client?
Yeah. I mean, I had an 18-year career. So I was 40 when I left and went out on my own. And so I had a lot of industry contacts, and just putting a stake in the sand and saying, hey, I'm doing this now was a big part of it. And then I was able to leverage that in with some of my existing network. So as many people make that transition from corporate to consulting, you got to lean on your existing clientele. And once you put that stake in the sand, so to speak, then you'll attract those people. And so, yeah, I just started working with that existing network. And then I also reached out. Basically, I had a rule back then. I would go anywhere within driving distance to speak for up to 2 hours for free. I wouldn't do this as a sleazy marketing, hey, buy for me. I would truly be interested in helping the businesses, the community, whatever organization I was speaking to, and helping them have a better understanding in that niche. And then that led to consulting opportunities, and numerous of them over time. And pretty soon I found myself so busy, it was bringing on additional resources and what we call 1099 or sub-consultants.
Right. So kind of like contractors or other people within the organization to support your growth. And then what would you say, I mean, in that early stage, you were leveraging your network, but you also mentioned that you went to go speaking, and that also brought in opportunities. Was speaking more powerful than leveraging your network, or was there something else that was really contributing to the leads and the inflow in those early days?
Yeah, initially for the first contracts and first initial jobs, it was leveraging my network. By speaking, that's what led me to my first Fortune 500 client. The 3 pillars of revenue, having a web presence or an e-presence, social footprint, then having a speaking presence, and then call it training and education or speaking presence. Anyway, those kind of all work together. But what happened is we started doing speaking and training engagements, and one of the Fortune 500 companies sent their people that were from the department that handled this kind of thing to our training, and they spent 4 days with me. So the relationship was built, and now that relationship didn't develop till almost a year later to an actual check coming into my bank account, but the path was set in place early on by doing speaking and training. So I think the speaking and training component can add to your leveraging your existing clients network and then helping you bootstrap up or climb that up that ladder.
Definitely. And so take us through, Paul, for those who are listening going, yeah, I can see that makes sense. Like, I understand I should be doing some speaking. How do they go about actually doing it? Like, just step by step, how do you identify where to go speak? And then how do you actually get on stage?
Yeah. First thing is, I don't consider myself a speaker, although now I'm trying to get into more of that. And I officially do call myself a speaker. But early on, no, I'm an introvert. I want to be on stage. So what you do is, the trick is you mask it in training. You're training people in your expertise. If you love and care about what you're doing, and you love your niche and your area of expertise, just think of it as training. You're just training some people in that area. And that's where your passion will come out. That's where your excitement, and then that will help you get over the fear of talking in front of people. And so whether I was talking to 5 people or 500 people, I was just training at that point and just talking about my area of subject that I just dove into.
And what were you doing then to actually get on stage? Like, how do you actually know who to reach out to? Were these specific kind of like accessibility, disability related groups or events or associations? Or tell us a little bit more about how you identified who to actually target.
Yeah, first we started doing like local businesses. And in America here, we have Chamber of Commerce, where a lot of business community work.
Right.
We were going where they were. Then we reached out to regional annual business meetings, AIA conferences, industry conferences, restaurant, retail conferences, things like that were bigger and more regional, bigger.
But the first few were they the Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah.
The initial ones?
Yeah.
What would you do? You would find, okay, I'm going to target the Northern California Chamber of Commerce or whatever it is. Who would you send an email to, or who would you pick up the phone? Like, take us through what you did there and who it was.
Perfect example. You know where Napa is. I'm sure you know where Napa is. Wine country, right? So
sure. Beautiful place.
Yeah. Napa had a chamber person. I just reached out to her via the web, said, hey, if you're interested in having a work group session for your business community and you'd like to learn more about the Americans with Disabilities Act and how it can help your businesses, let me know. I'd be willing to come over and talk to you. they said, yeah, that's perfect. We've been wanting.
You were talking about fees. They didn't have to pay or anything. You're just saying, if you want me to come by, I'm happy to talk about this. And you could call it a working session?
Yeah, I said a workshop.
You call it a workshop?
Yeah.
Okay.
An informative workshop. And at that time, I pretty much would go, we'd speak up to 2 hours without any fees. It was just quasi-marketing. We were still young. I had a business partner. We weren't established yet, so we couldn't charge. To get us for 2 hours, it's not cheap. So we just don't do that anymore. But when we first started out, that was absolutely the way to go, is starting small, being willing to invest in other people first. Then once you get your foothold in the marketplace and established, it just takes time. It just doesn't happen overnight.
How long did it take you from doing that first speaking event or workshop, right, or training as you called it, from doing that initial one to actually seeing that turn into a paying client?
It happened right away, because what would happen is once we got in front of people and a relationship was built, inevitably a week or two later after those types of workshops, we would get a phone call and get hired. That's why I think when you're first starting out as a consultant, getting out and doing a free 1 hour, 2 hour, just informative workshop in the business community industry will jumpstart your consulting business.
Yeah.
And not only that, you'll get a return. It's like podcasts. You got to put a lot of effort into it, but really to go out and talk for 2 hours on your topic, it's really quasi marketing, and you're just really there to serve. And it really has a ripple effect that you may see 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 6 weeks later.
Yeah. I like to describe it as it's like planting seeds, right? Everything that you do in your marketing, as long as you're in this business for the long term, right, you can start seeing results in the short term, but you have to approach it with the mindset of the long term. And so you plant those seeds now, because the sooner that you plant them, the sooner you're going to start to reap the rewards and the benefits of that beautiful fruit or flower or whatever it is that you're planting. And so, yeah, that's a really great example. And also, I think what's important for people to recognize is, even though you might just get that first one and it's free and it's not like a big audience, it doesn't really matter, because you're now getting leverage, right? You can now approach another place and say, hey, I just spoke at the Napa Chamber of Commerce or XYZ Chamber of Commerce, and I'd love to come speak here. In their mind, it's like, oh, you spoke there. Okay, I guess you actually can do it. Sure, right? So for people to understand that it doesn't matter how small you start, every step, right, every accomplishment then builds or helps to build the next one.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't long after that, we were at downtown San Francisco at the AIA San Francisco, one of the biggest AI chapters in the nation.
Yeah. People
started hearing about it, and it just snowballed. And so, again, you don't get an immediate return, but you do get a ripple effect, and it comes back to you in many ways, and very quickly.
So we've been talking a little bit about how you got started, but there's going to also be people listening right now and tuning in who already have established businesses, like you have an established business, right? You got actually more than one. But what's working for you today? So fast forward several years later, the business has done well. You've worked with some very well-known clients. What's working best for you right now to generate leads and opportunities for your consulting business?
I wish I could say I have some fancy secret for you, but because we have a 10-year track record and a developed client base, I literally am not spending any money on AdWords or anything, and my funnel just keeps coming. I'm actually not even trying to work or build on that business. It's just clients are coming to me just through referrals and existing networks. And because I'm building my personal brand over at paulklein.net, which is my pricing and coaching program. But my existing business is just pretty much on autopilot. I've invested over the last 10 years in that. And so the network's there. And so that's the beauty of it is, once you put in all the hard work and grinded your teeth and pounded the pavement, and it's a high 6-figure business, it's on autopilot. Now, I could really ramp it up if I really put more effort into it.
Right.
I'm branching off into the speaking and coaching stuff like many of your listeners are. Eventually, that business will ramp down as my other one ramps up.
Got it.
And so forth.
And how many people do you have now in that business? How many kind of team members?
Well, here's the thing. When my business partner and I, we've both had managed employees for over 20 years. And our number one rule is no employees.
Got it. Okay.
It's hampered our growth probably to some extent, but I really believe in what I call the 6 or 7 figure small. And that is being lean and mean, much like you, Michael, and your brother. You don't need to have a big agency and hundreds of employees to do well and have the freedom and the lifestyle that you want. So we lean on a lot of sub-consultants, what we call 1099s in America here, or people that are basically team members, and we bring in for projects, all on project base. Hey, I've got a big project out in the Midwest. Can you do it? If you can't do it, I got another guy that can do it. We just work that way. So I've got probably about a team of about less than 10 sub-consultants that help me at any given time that I can lean on whenever I need to.
Got it. And when you're working in that type of model, what kind of margin are you typically seeing as you're working with those 1099s and other contractors? Is it kind of across the board, like a standard, your margin is 30%, 60%, 80%? Can you kind of give us a sense of where you are as you're working with contractors as opposed to having employees full-time in-house?
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early-stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early-stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
Yeah, it varies on job to job. My whole business is very high margin because we have such low overhead. We don't have employees. We don't have office buildings, cars, planes, or anything like that. So it's very low overhead and high margin. But I'd say on my most recent job, it was a small job. I think it was a $10,000 job. And my subconsultants for everything was $2,500 or $3,500.
Okay.
And so out of a $10,000 bill, it was just one small one that comes to mind. So I don't know what the margin of that is.
Yeah, so you might have like a 60, 65%, give or take. I mean, it depends. Yeah, everything else that you have going into, but on the project basis. Got it. Okay. So you have a co-founder in that business, correct?
Yeah. Mark is my business partner in the 88 consulting business, as well as my SaaS company.
Right. What's been your experience of having a partner? So you mentioned Sam, who's like a brother to me. He's actually my cousin. Our fathers are twins. We've been building multiple businesses together. We've sold businesses over the years, and there's lots of good things. But what's been your experience of working with a partner or kind of a co-founder in your business?
Yeah, I have a different take on it than I did probably 10 years ago. Part of that is in the arrangement I have in our SaaS business. Great guys, great partners and everything, and as well as Mark in my other business. But moving forward, and what I teach is somebody said this saying that the only ship that doesn't float is a partnership. I think that's true to some extent. It's like a marriage, and you have to be really, really careful. And I think a better approach for a lot of people is have one person be the lead, the prime, the owner, the shareholder, whatever it is on paper, and then have a high paid, even share the profits 50-50 with somebody, but make them not necessarily the owner in the LLC or the C Corp or whatever it is. Bring them on as a high paid partner, but not a legal partner.
Why is that? What's been your experience and whatever you're comfortable sharing here, but just in terms of so that others can benefit from kind of being able to see around the corner of what could come. It sounds like you're saying that maybe when it comes to leadership, or kind of using the analogy of the ship, right? Like both people are trying to steer in different directions, and that could cause some issues. Is that kind of really what you're referring to, or is there something beyond?
Yeah, that. And also sometimes there's always, when you have even a 50-50 partnership, there's always this kind of cloud over the hanging. Hey, I'm putting in 12 hours a day, and Joe over here, who's 50-50 partner, is only putting in 6 hours, or he's taking off to go with the family. I'm working over Labor Day weekend. It just feels weird. Whereas if it gets weird enough that you want to make a break, well, now it's okay. How do we dispose of the company? Who gets what? Unless it can get really ugly really quick. Whereas if just one person was the lead and you were just a really high paid partner, a profit sharing partner, and now it's easy to make a clean break. Hey, and also it's easy to say, hey, whatever you earn or put in, you get, and whatever I do, I get. And then and then whatever we do jointly, we share on. Right. That's kind of how we've structured it. Mark and I is his line item, or my line item, and then a a joint. And so when we do joint projects, but I never have to look over my shoulder with him. He's semi-retired, so he'll work 2 hours a week, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect me the way we set it up.
Right.
You have to be really careful and intentional on those things and get them vetted out early, and don't partner up with anybody, because when you want to make a break, it can get ugly real quick.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good, I think, discussion and kind of like what we're exploring here that maybe a lot of people don't think about much. What I've observed is that, especially in the early days, people tend to kind of lean on or look for a partner because they want to like offload certain things they're not comfortable doing.
Yes.
They think that's probably the best thing for them. But what they don't see is what you and I are discussing right now, which is what could happen in the future, right? And so all the legal stuff is so important to have in place. I mean, even though Sam is like a brother to me, he's a cousin. We've done multiple businesses together. We've had businesses separately, been through a lot, like challenging situations, but also really great experiences. But we have everything also documented and done professionally, because it's like a good insurance policy, right? It's the peace of mind. You're probably never going to need it. Hopefully you won't. But if one day you do, it just keeps everything clear. And as you said, like you could be down the road and maybe at the beginning you both were on the same kind of mindset and had the same understanding. But now when money's involved and different things happen, one party can kind of look at the other and go, well, no, I didn't think that's not what I meant. But if you have everything documented properly, it's like, well, it doesn't matter what we're thinking right now. Here's what we agreed to at that time. And so here's what we're legally following. So I see a lot of people who are very successful using or leveraging partnerships. We had Roland Fraser on the podcast not too long ago. He's a big proponent of partnerships. But I also see a lot of people that are just leaning to partnerships because it seems like it could be something just easier to do. They could accomplish more, but they're not thinking long term. And then in fact, they bring in the wrong person and start to experience a lot of the things that you just mentioned you've gone through as well. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let's now switch then to talk about pricing, because it's an area that you've done a lot of work in. And I really want to kind of hear from you in terms of like, what's your experience when it comes to pricing projects as a consultant? And what do you see, Paul, as being kind of the biggest thing that holds consultants back from earning higher fees on their engagements?
Oh, they undervalue their services so badly. We're all guilty of that. Talked about this before, Michael, you and I, the first sale is yourself, as Alan Weiss says. And if you don't believe in the value and the service that you're providing, neither will the marketplace or your clients. I work with a lot of coaches, consultants, freelancers, C-suites that want to go out on their own. And I'm like, you're charging what? My perception is you should be way up here and you're way down there. And because what happens is what comes easy to them, they think is less valuable because it comes easy to them. What's easy to them is gold to somebody else. And so I think that's the biggest problem is that mindset. I know you're big on mindset and really valuing yourself, not undervaluing and undercharging for your services.
And so what do you say to someone who goes, okay, yeah, I get that, Paul. Like, I know I need to be charging more, but something's holding me back. Like, yeah, maybe my average project right now is $15,000. I know it should be at $50,000 or more, but I've been at for a little while now and nothing's really changed. Like, what do you say to that person? What have you found to be the difference in being able to go from where someone is right now to moving their fees up to that next level?
It's changing that perception or their mindset, is because what's holding them back is their view of the situation or their view of the value or their view of the $15,000. They're like, oh, I can't charge 50 because that's, to you, that's a crazy amount. But to your client, that's pocket change. Blair Enns says you price the client, not the service, in his book, Pricing Creativity. You have to look at what the value is that you're bringing to the client. Put the value from their perspective, not your own. Quit being so dang self-centered. Look at it from your client's point of view, not what the dollar amount is in your world.
Definitely. So you talked about the 3 pillars that you've used in your own consulting businesses that have kind of helped you to grow. Take us through what those 3 pillars are. Yeah. 3 pillars of revenue. They're basically 3 things here. Let me recap here. So number 1 is you got to have, in order to have a balance to write out those highs and lows, in income, as you know, it comes and goes, it's either feast or famine. And so what I talk about is the 3 pillars of revenue. And the first one is just your basic consulting services, whatever your deliverables are that you're doing with your one-on-one client, your high ticket consulting and so forth. Then the second one is a training and education, or even could be speaking program. That's where I'm talking about getting out to chambers, industry, conferences, and even getting paid for that. I say do up to 2 hours for free. Anything over 2 hours, up to 8 or multiple days, you should be paid for. And then the third revenue is an online e-presence, where you have all your productized services, ebooks, all your freebies, lead magnets, just like on the
consulting success site, you have all sorts of great materials on there. So you have a great e-presence. You also have a great speaking and workshop and training program.
Right.
And then you have your regular consulting that you could do too for one-on-one. So you have all three of those pillars working together, which is why you're successful.
And so for you, like going back to that American Disabilities Act and accessibility consulting business that you have, what were you doing? What's an example just for people to kind of maybe make it a little bit more tangible? When you talk about an e-presence, right, online presence, what were you guys doing at that time? Or is that something that you recognized like later on and maybe yet haven't done? Or just give us a sense of, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, no, I stumbled across it on accident. But what ended up happening is there also was a regulatory exam or testing. So if you're in real estate, CEUs, there's lots of industries and verticals that have those type of regulatory or association CEUs. So if you can wrap some kind of a training or online program that satisfies those requirements, that's a sweet spot because now you have a captive audience. And that's exactly what we had. I just curated a bunch of content on the internet and put it into a PDF. And I charged $29 for it. I think in the first year we did like $29,000 in sales. And that just happened by accident. I was just putting it together to help people and thought, I'll put a price on it for $29 and see what happens.
Were you actively marketing that, like sending paid traffic to, or did you just put it up on your website, or how did that work?
This was 09, 010, so there wasn't a whole lot of paid traffic yet. But we were doing, I think I played with Google AdWords a little bit early on.
The Wild West days of Google AdWords, yeah.
Yeah, I was building my email list because I had just an old-fashioned lead magnet PDF. So my email list grew. It's up to like 5,000 people now or 6,000. It just grew over time early on. And then I just pinged those people. And then it was a great supplement when I first started out on my own.
Nice. So Paul, what habit have you developed that you feel is really just central to your success? Like a personal habit that you just feel really kind of catapulted and supported your success as a consultant, business owner, and leader?
For me, the biggest thing is not being afraid to fail. Everybody thought I was crazy when I left in 09. I had 3 kids and a mortgage, $3,000 a month pay mortgage. And in the heat of the recession, the stock market crashed, the world was ending. It was bad if you remember back then. Here I did. I left my 18-year career, full benefits, high 6-figure year job and full benefits and retirement, and went out on my own. Everybody thought I was crazy, but I knew I would succeed. I just blocked it out and if I failed, I'd figure it out. And I still do that. I'll start things, I'll make mistakes. And I think a lot of people don't act or are afraid to take action because they're afraid how they're going to look. What are people going to say? Life's too short, man. You just got to try it, see what works, and course correct as you go. And don't be afraid of failure. It's not a bad thing. Yeah,
I'm a big believer of the exact same thing. I don't really call failure. I call it a learning experience. It's you get to learn. There's no such thing as learning only positives. If you do something and it doesn't work out the way you thought, now you're closer to figuring out what does work because you've eliminated something that doesn't work, right? And we see this all the time with our clients and in the coaching that we do with consultants, that they'll try something. Sometimes they're doing something that's uncomfortable. They're venturing into the kind of unknown zone because they're doing new things and there's hesitation around that. But the moment that you do it, you learn something. You might hit it out of the park and that's fantastic. Or you might go, okay, that didn't work quite the way that I want to, but at least now I'm a lot closer to figuring out what does work and making that adjustment to my messaging or to my marketing. And that consistency and taking action around it is what really creates success for people. So yeah, right on. Great share.
Would we rather be on our deathbed going, man, I sure wish I would have launched that product instead of thought about it for 20 years.
Yeah.
I launched my first group coaching program, I think in May. I had 1 sale. I was a little depressed at first, and my wife saw me sulking, and she in the butt, which was a good thing. And I'm course correcting. And hey, the market told me what I was doing was not what it wanted. So I'm fixing that. And
good stuff. Nice. So Paul, this has been a great conversation. Really appreciate you coming on. I want to make sure people can learn more about your consulting businesses and what you have going on right now. So where's the best place for them to go? You mentioned, was it paulklein.net? Is that correct?
Yeah. Best place is at paulklein.net. And that's my webpage for my personal brand. I've got a free product pricing roadmap that talks about creating productized services and having your value ladder for your different products and services, as well as anchoring sheets that you can fill out. And then I also have the Pricing is Positioning podcast. We're up above, I think, 35 episodes or so. And Michael, you'll be on there coming up shortly, and got a lot of great guests in the consulting world and so forth. So pricingispositioning.com or on your iTunes, Spotify app, as well as paulklein.net.
There we go. We'll link all that up. Paul, again, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.